So Shmuel.
Today we continue with the second chapter of the book of Shmuel. We just read yesterday the story of Chana, the barren woman, the outsider, who gives birth to a child and promises it to God. In the beginning of the chapter, Chana offers her prayer. We mentioned in yesterday's chapter that Chana is the model for prayer in many ways, that the Gemara looks at her. Just one example is that she moved her lips but did not vocalize any words, and that's where we learn in the Amidah that we're supposed to move our lips and not to speak out loud. And other instances, other places, the Gemara says other things. We got a lot to do, so let's continue. Vatit palayel Chana vatomar alatz libi badonai rama karni badonai rachav pi aloivai ki samachti bishuatecha. Chana says, my heart exults in God. I've triumphed because of God. I gloat over my enemies. I rejoice in your salvation, your deliverance, God. We know, unfortunately, that her co-wife, sister wife, whatever the word might be used, Penina, made fun of the fact that she couldn't have any children. And this may be, she's saying, thank you, God. There's no holy one like God. There's none besides you. There is no rock like our God, a rock, something that lasts forever. Al harbu tidabru gavoa gavoa. Talk no more with lofty ideas. Yetze atak mipichem. Let not arrogance cross your lips. Ki el deot Adonai velo nitkanu alilot. For God is all-knowing, and by him all actions are measured. So don't talk and say big fancy things when it's not the truth. Kesha giburim chatim v'nichshalim arzu chayo. The bows of the mighty are broken, and the faltering are girded with strength. Seveim balechem niskaru, urevim chadelu. Men who were once satiated must ask for bread. Men once hungry, hunger no longer is for them. Anakara yalda shiva v'rabat banim umlala. While the barren woman bears 7, the mother of many is forlorn, right? You think you're on top. Today you're on top. Tomorrow you're on the bottom. Today you're on the bottom. Tomorrow you're on the top. From here, the Gemara, the Midrash says that Chana had more children after Shmuel, that she had 7 children. Adonai meimitu michayem orit sheol vayal. God deals death and gives life. He casts one down into Sheol, into the depths, and raises up. Adonai morish uma'ashir mashpil. God makes poor and makes rich. He casts down. He also lifts high, right? We saying that everything is based upon God. That's what she's saying. You go up, you go down, and that's what she's saying here. He raises the poor from the dust, lifts up the needy from the dung. He sets the poor with nobles. They get seats of honor because the pillars of earth are God. He has set the world upon them. We know that similar phrase from the beginning of Pasuk Chet, verse 8, is in Hala. He guards the steps of those that are faithful, that those are close to him. But the wicked perish in darkness, for not by strength shall man prevail, right? Doesn't by strength, man prevails through God. Adonai yechatu merivav alav bashamayim yiraim Adonai yadin afsayarts v'itenos l'malchov v'ram karim mishicho. The foes of the Lord will be shattered. God will thunder against them in the heaven. God judges from one end of the earth to the other and gives triumph, power to his king and to his anointed one. And with these last phrase of Malcho and Mishicho, there are those who say that, of course, she's foreshadowing the idea of her son who's going to begin the idea of kingship, and ultimately with the one who is the first one who is sort of anointed as a Mashiach, as a Messiah, if you want to put it as such, as David HaMelech. One other thing, Chazal talk about how when she talks about going down and back up, that she's talking about because Shmuel is a descendant of Korach. I don't remember if it's from Chana's side. I think it's from Elkanah, from her husband's side. And when Moshe had his fight against Korach went down into the depths, and the idea that he would never come back up. But here, in a sense, he's coming back up with his descendant, this great leader of Bnei Yisrael, Shmuel. Okay, so that's the prayer of Hannah. Much more to say about it, but we've got to go on. So we're in verse 11. Pasuk Yudal. Vayelech Elkanah ramata al beito v'anar hayam misharet Adonai et pnei Eli hakohen. So Elkanah goes home, and where is the Na'ar? Shmuel. He's with Eli hakohen. Uvnei Eli bnei Blial lo yadu et Adonai. But Eli's sons were scoundrels. They didn't listen to God. It's the third time we've had this word in the recent chapters, Blial, without a yoke, somebody who is a scoundrel, whatever word you want to use. Hannah said to Eli, I am not a bat Blial. Don't think of me that way. And there might be a little bit of an allusion in there to the fact that, but your children are. And that's the way they're described here. Those are the same words that are used by the gang rapists back in the story of Pilegesh Begiva. So what would happen is that people would bring karbanot, and the priest, they would come along with this three-pronged fork while the meat was boiling. And what happened was he would stick the fork into the kettle, and whatever the fork brought up, that's what the priest would get. Right? It was like a grab bag. You'd stick your fork in, whatever you got, you got. But even before the chelev, which is the non-kosher suet, the sort of, we'll call it the fat around the organs, it's not kosher, can't be consumed. Before that was turned into smoke, the priest would come and say to the people who were sacrificing, hand over some of the roast for the priest, because he won't accept boiled meat, only raw. The man said to him, let's first deal with the suet and take it, and then you can take as much as you want. He would say, no, hand it over at once, or I'll take it by force. And what this is what it's saying in sort of this complex language is that the children of Eli wouldn't wait for the proper time to when they were supposed to get the sacrifice. They would go and they would grab things before it was proper, before the right time. And they use their bully pulpit, right? If you don't let me do it, I'll take it by force. The sin of these young men, and we're talking about the two sons of Eli, was terrible for God, because they treated God's offerings in a impious, in a disrespectful fashion. However, as opposed to that, Shmuel misharet pnei Adonai nar chagur ephod bat. But Shmuel, he was engaged in the service of God. He was girded with a linen ephod, and there's one of the places it doesn't say. It starts with the noun and then the verb, because it's using a contrast. Usually in the Hebrew, right, has the verb first, and with that's usually what goes on. But here we're trying to show the contrast between Eli's son and the child who has been dedicated to God. His mother would also make him a little robe. She'd make him a coat, and every year she'd bring him up a new coat. She didn't want it to be like Joseph and the tattered coat. I can't remember the name of the book. She wanted to have a something from nothing. She wanted to have a jacket every year, a new jacket, no holes in it. Uvarach Eli et Elkanah et Ishto v'amar yasem Adonai lechazera min ha'isha azot tachat ha'sheila sheshala Adonai v'alchu l'mkomo. Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, may God give you offspring by this woman, because what she gave over to the Lord, and they would go home. Because God had taken note of Hannah, remembered Hannah, and she had 3 sons and 2 daughters, while Shmuel was growing up in the service of the Lord. Continuing now, that's the second section. Now we have the third section of this chapter. Eli Zakain Ma'od. Eli now has gotten very old. Shama kol asher yasun banav l'chol Yisrael v'et asher yishkevun et hanashim hatzvaot petach ha'omoed. And he heard all the sons were doing in Israel, and again, they're bnei Blial, they're bad people, and therefore what he's going to hear is not good. And how they slept with the women who performed tasks at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The rabbis tried to say it doesn't mean that they really slept with them. It means that they would go and they would delay the karbanot that these women who had previously given birth wanted to bring, which allowed them not to be intimate with their husbands, because they couldn't be intimate with their husbands until after the sacrifice was brought. That's what the rabbis say. But it seems from the text here and from the way that God is going to respond to Eli and the children of Eli, that this is not a simple sort of sin, but that they were doing something truly terrible, that they were, it was an abuse of power. So abuse of power with taking parts of the sacrifices that weren't deemed yet ready for them. And here, abuse of power there and control, and using it to curry sexual favors. Vayomer lahem, and so he hears about these things they're doing, and he says, "Lama tasun kadvarim ha'ela asher anochi shomei devrechem ra'im be'et kol ha'am ela." Why am I hearing these terrible things that you're doing? Al b'ni, don't do that, my sons. Ki lo tovash asher anochi shomei ma'avarim im Adonai. What I'm hearing is our bad reports spreading about. Im yechatei ish leishu v'lo Elohim v'im l'Adonai yechatei ish mi yitpalel lo. If a man sings against another man, God may pardon him. But if a man offends against God, who can obtain that pardon? And this seems like he's saying it's worse what you're doing to God, taking the portion of the sacrifice and the sleeping with the women, which to most of us we would say doesn't sound right, that the other way around would be better. Right? But that's not what he says. But they did not listen to the voice of their father. And why didn't they listen? It makes it sound like they no longer had free will, because God wanted them to die. They had done enough evil that it was time for them to go. And again, the contrast to the sons of Eli, the sons of privilege versus the outsider, the son of the woman who we thought was accused of being a drunkard, but actually was sincere in prayer. Verse 26, V'anar Shmuel holech v'gadel v'tov Gamim Adonai v'gamim an Hashem. But Shmuel was getting better and greater, and he was held in high esteem, both by God and by men. So the sons of Eli are sinning against God and against men, abusing their power, and this young man, Shmuel, is just getting a sterling reputation for being a great person. And a man of God, some sort of messenger, comes to Eli, and he says, I revealed myself to your father's house in Egypt when they were slaves to Pharaoh. And I chose him from among all the tribes to be my priest. You're right, you're going to wear the special clothing and you're going to help with the sacrifices. Why are you trampling upon the sacrifices and the offered? You have honored your sons more than me, feeding on the first portions of every offering of my people. God says, I intended for your father's house to remain in my service forever. But that's not what's going to happen, because I honor those who honor me, but I spurn those who dishonor me. We had this in the past a number of times, where we have the kal versus kaved. Kal means something that's light, something you don't take seriously, and kaved is something that's heavy, something that's weighty. You should have taken this, you should have understood that this was heavy, this was weighty, serving for God, but you took it lightly. Hinei yamim ba'im, v'gadati et zaracha v'etzroa beit avicha miyot zakein bebeitecha. Time is coming when I'm going to break the power away from your father's house, and there shall be no elder in your house. And you will gaze grudgingly at everything that Israel has, but there will be no elder in your house. There's no going to be anybody who's not just elderly, but has influence, has strength, has power. Your time has come. I shall cut off your offspring from my altar. Your spirit will languish, and all the increase in your house shall die. You're going to get nothing better. You were privileged, and now it's going to be taken away. And this is the sign to know that this is that's going to happen. Both of your sons are going to die in one day. And I'm going to establish a great priest, a faithful one, who's going to act in accordance with my wishes, and I will build him an enduring house along with my anointed one, referring presumably to a king. And all those who remain from your house are going to bow down to him just to get a little bread. They're going to say, please assign to me one of the priestly duties that I can have a morsel of bread to eat. And here we see God with a terrible curse towards Eli. And part of what went wrong here, there seem to be two things that go wrong here. One is the fact that Eli has too much power. He's a Kohen. He seems to be some sort of a shofet. Right, he's a navi, he's a prophet. He's got all the power, and that's never a good thing when you have consolidation of power in one place. We spoke of back in the book of Dvarim, the Torah has all these different. There's the priest, there's the judge, there's the king, there's the officer. There's the prophet. They're supposed to keep each other in check and in balance. But Eli is seemingly all of them. While he may not be a terrible sinner, his children are, and he does not do enough to put his children in place, and that's seen as a terrible mistake, and ultimately he's gone too far, and so his children will be punished as a result of that.